Hello. You are listening to Dads with Startups, a podcast about a couple of entrepreneurs who put family first.
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Pretty good. You're not in your
Good.
usual setting. Is this still your house?
This is my house. This is the Airbnb that I just cleaned.
Ah,
That's my life now. Doing, acting like a hotel staff member and then entrepreneur on the side.
it looks nice.
So this was, thank you. Yeah. It's all nice and clean. I did, spend a long time on the bed, etc. But yeah, I figured this is a place that I could do an audio recording. It's pretty quiet now, away from the children, and we are getting rid of our office in town because my office mate, who I was renting it with, he lost his job, and he no longer wants to keep it going, and I don't feel like paying the entire rent, so I'll have to make do with some new, more creative spaces, and this is one of them.
Yeah, it looks nice. You got the bed, a couple end tables, a picture of an ox, I think, up above it.
I think so. That might be some sort of cattle ox type thing. It's sort of, it's sort of what roams around
a little
up here,
southwestern
where I live. Yeah, exactly. Got the livestock.
Yeah.
So yeah. How's everything going on your end? What's new in life, with the fam, with the balancing everything?
Yeah, balance. Well, today's Valentine's Day, so
Yes, it
there's
is.
that. We our kids, we have 4 kids, and our oldest is 10, and he is just not ready to babysit the younger siblings yet. I know
Big
some
job.
people who leave their 10-year-olds in charge, and we tried that a few times, and it didn't really end well, so we're not quite to that phase of our family yet. I very much
Yeah.
look forward to those days. And so we don't have a babysitter lined up today. So we are not really doing anything out
Mm-hmm.
of the ordinary on this Valentine's Day, my wife and I.
Makes
So
sense.
we're gonna eat crepes tonight with the
Good.
family and
Okay.
kind of celebrate Valentine's Day with the kids, I guess. So yeah, how about you?
Sometimes that's how it goes. Yeah, we got lucky this year, and there's a family in town that we know pretty well. They have 3 daughters versus our 2 daughters, but but they're all about the same age. And randomly, the husband, we were at this coffee shop where we often talk to them, and my wife and I were there, and randomly he said, "Do you guys ever do date nights?" And we said, "Yeah, we try to, not these days as much."
Right.
But he's like, we talked to a friend of ours who's a therapist, and they said we need to start doing date nights. Would you guys like to do some trading? And we said, yeah, let's, this would be great. So thankfully on Saturday, they had an opening, and so we brought our kids over for about 3 or 4 hours. About 3.5 hours or so. And we dropped them off, and we came back here and just kind of had a date night. We had a kind of a pre-Valentine's Day that night, so we kind of got it out of the way, which is nice. And and that was fun. When I came back about, again, 7 or 8 o'clock, the kids were having the time of their lives. Five girls jumping around and doing dance songs and dance all this and that, and it was a very nice little working out. So we're gonna return the favor hopefully soon, and take their kids. But I think that's something that it's like you get the moment to do it, you think you can't, and then you do it, and you're like, whoa, why haven't I done this more often? We need to figure out a way to prioritize that. So I'm gonna try it. Try to push for more of those things. See if there's any other families that want to do those kind of trades, because that was nice.
Yeah, we need to get out more. The kids they demand so much of your attention, and I can see why. I mean, I think I saw this chart once it was a study on happiness of your marriage over time. over how many years
Yeah.
you've been married. And they all, naturally they start out high right after marriage. It takes a pretty good plummet with kids. It's like first kid, and like first kid is like,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. Did nothing really happen. 2 or 3, it just really
Sure.
plummets at that point. And
Oh,
and then it bounces. It totally recovers.
good.
And you can see
That's
that's
good.
about when your kids start growing up and they
Yeah.
start being able to take care of themselves, and then you can talk to your spouse again. Because right now I come from home from work and I can't have a conversation with my wife until after all the kids are asleep, and I might get
Yeah.
an hour a day at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Makes sense. Well, it's interesting because I have been feeling that. We've both been feeling that. And we were talking last week about just what happened to, what happened all of a sudden. We were together a long time before kids. So we knew each other very well. And all of a sudden we find ourselves, one kid came, and yet, but it didn't feel like you say right on. It didn't feel dramatically like it was dramatic at the time, but now in comparison, it was pretty easy.
Right.
2 kids have come, and it's a lot more, obviously, and we were just like, we're not talking to each other as much. There has been just this feeling of like we're battling through something versus it's living,
You're
living instead of just
you're
there was a time where we were
co-parenting.
just
You're not
living life.
exactly
Yeah,
lovers, right?
right.
I think that's
Exactly.
yeah.
And so I've been looking for, you know, I don't we've always had a certain amount of conflict in our relationship, but now what's happened is the only thing that's left in our communication has become the same level of conflict, but now there's not the other side as much to balance it out, which is the spending the time to heal and all that stuff. So I've been looking kind of at myself, and I've been looking at ways to work on that. And recently I joined like an online men's group, which has been really cool. I was kind of looking for one for a while, and a friend of mine mentioned it to me. And so I went to the past couple weeks of it, and it's really nice to kind of like I have a number of friends in life that are men that have no families, no kids, no nothing, and they're kind of lackadaisical. It's very hard to relate to those men as where I'm at in my life
Yeah.
because they don't really understand my issues. Most of them are not even in long-term relationships, so it's hard for me to find men that are like, I'm committed to family, I'm committed to a relationship and to making it work, even though it's hard. And so to find other men in this group that were also committed to that and were working at it, it was like, oh, this is refreshing, and I'm not the only one. So it was a little cathartic, and I'm gonna keep going because I want to keep, as you said, until that uptick happens in the relationship, and we're kind of back to being closer, emotionally closer naturally. I got to find some methods and tools to kind of get through these years and still, try to get the most enjoyment as one can out of being a father, which is also exciting and fun in its own way.
So this is a great segue into our prearranged topic for today. You sent me an article that Richard Branson posted on LinkedIn. And he kind of goes over, let's see, the title of the article is what advice do you have for dadpreneurs? I like that term, dadpreneurs. I'd actually never heard it before,
Mhm.
but and he goes on to talk about his work-life balance and shares a few learned lessons, which I want to talk about. But I think to preface this, I would like to bring up Elon Musk's approach with Twitter. This was a couple months ago, right, when he kind of took over, and
Yeah.
um, and he had publicly shared this post, even on Twitter, that said something like Twitter employees should work at least 40 hours a week, or leave the company. He said, let's see, what did he say? He said something like, I'm trying to find the quote. I have it here somewhere. Um, Basically, he said, commit to working long hours at high intensity. And then he said, at least 40 hours a week. And
Right.
the the world erupted and all these people were like, oh, I'm quitting, I would never want to work at that company. And but then, at some point that trickled down, management got to the managers, and then they were making people work 12-hour days pretty regularly, sometimes working through weekends and that kind of thing. And so there's been a lot of polarized thoughts on, like, is that okay? Like, of course he's allowed to, it's his company, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was refreshing. I was excited to see that, and I happened to be listening to a New York Times podcast. It's called The Daily. Then they happen to have a thing on that, on the firing, and because I had just had a friend who was just like, "Can you believe he's doing this?" And I said, "Well, did you know that Facebook laid off like 10,000 people, like 3 times the number the week before? Why are you not upset about that?" And because I think he only laid off 2 or 3,000 at Twitter, and my interpretation of what happened was that people were upset because the tone was really plain and direct, like, "Hey, start working or you're out."
Yeah.
Whereas Facebook was just like, "I'm so sorry. It was my fault. I'm just so sorry." Same effect, maybe worse at Facebook, but the tone of
Yeah.
the Twitter firing or that was better get to work. And it's interesting because when I was listening to that podcast, the person that they chose to highlight to me was very strange. It was a person who was on the moderation team, I guess. So they didn't really have like an engineering job. They described the day. They were like, "I woke up on a Thursday. I took my kids to school. I went to the mall. I was shopping for some new shoes for my kid." And and they're describing their day on a typical Thursday. Hours and hours later, they finally tried to check their email or check their Slack or something and realized they had no access. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, what were you doing at the mall all day long? Not working clearly. And then they said, and this is going to be such a hard thing for me because I just bought a home in San Francisco. Now, I'm from the Bay Area. The only people who have homes in San Francisco are the super wealthy. Everybody else lives outside of San Francisco, but this person bought a home directly in San Francisco. So I just thought the whole thing was quite ironic. It was like interesting that you're choosing, this is the person that you're showcasing the harm of this, the decision. But and I felt for her because it was sad to lose your job. So my heart goes out to anyone who's lost their job. But at the same time, it is interesting that the choice was still hers. She could have chosen to keep working, I believe, or not. And so I guess I have a feeling like in my life right now it does feel like I'm clearly doing 40 hours minimum. That doesn't feel like enough. I feel like I would love to be doing more than that, because things need to get done. And yet at the same time, being a father, you're just doing your best to kind of keep afloat. So yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm, with the Richard Branson thing, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that one. He obviously, it's there's a certain level that you can relate to it because he was probably coming from a level where he had probably a lot more help with the home life, I'm sure, at his fingertips. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he talked about one thing that I can relate to, and I think any dad could, is he said that as your family grows, you have all these aspirations of how your life is going to go. And it's not really, I had great plans to do this and that, and then kids ruined it. But it's more like,
Yeah.
just your way of your habits, right? And your work habits. And I think if I didn't have kids, I personally get much more productive in the late afternoons, which is funny because you would think I would kind of get burnout, but something flips on at that point. I don't know if maybe I just have fewer emails and distractions that come in to me, and maybe that's all it is. But evenings, whenever I work late, I just get super productive, and weekends as well. And so, but with kids, you've got to dedicate your time to your family as well. So I can't just work
Yeah.
every night, even though I would have no problem doing that myself. Um, So he says that basically that you need to break away from that like business mold, that 9 to 5. I think the company Elon is building is a company that's excited about building the new Twitter, and redoing it
Mm-hmm.
and improving it, and kind of he's
Right.
bringing it back to startup mode. I think there's no question about his ability to create these just amazing companies that just
Totally.
change the world. So I will Twitter change the world? I don't know. I think that's a stretch, but still, like his style, that's his style, and I don't think great things are built off of people who are. Honestly, I don't think great things are built off of people who only work 9 to 5 hours. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think this has been kind of close to my heart. I may have mentioned it to you in the Slack, but I just lost someone who was running one of my companies, and um, it's interesting because I didn't want that to happen. She left. She left, and she had she's going off to better things. So I'm happy for her, but it was like, oh, this is not great timing. I don't want to be having to both take over some of her role as well as try to reassign it to someone who doesn't have the same training, and also look for someone new that's not a new project that I was hoping to have on my plate. So I was kind of running it, but the interesting thing about it is that her and I knew she wasn't working 40 hours a week. She was paid 40 hours a week. That was her salary and
Hmm.
the contract. But I would guess, because I used to do her job, that she was working maybe 10 to 15 on a busy week. And because things were working and I didn't have to worry about the company and I didn't have to pay attention, I turned aside from that and I was like, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Like, great, just keep things working. But it has forced me, her leaving, to look and see how efficiently were things being run, and do I really need someone full time at the position? And the truth is no. And so there was some waste there. And so it's sort of like, I think Elon's Elon inspires me in many ways as an entrepreneur, just because whether one agrees with his political views or not, I don't necessarily do that. But what I will say is I'm inspired by his sheer will and persistence and dedication to sort of the basics, and him showcasing that you could cut a large number of people from Twitter and things are still running fine, gives me some inspiration that maybe we can make some changes internally at our companies to make ourselves more efficient, and we don't need all the people that we had. And why not run a little more lean? That's kind of what I think it's kind of what we need right now as a company, is to run as lean as possible, because we need every dollar we can to go in the right direction for growth for our kind of our new venture, which is the course platform. So yeah, I think there's some inspiration to gain from that. And I guess this
Should we
isn't
be?
necessarily about. Yeah, good.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, should we be worried? I mean, what does it matter if they're working 40 hours or not if they are as productive as they say they're gonna be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if things were good when they're good, but I guess I was thinking the other day, I can probably have one person do that role, and another company, and just get rid of one person. This will be nice,
Right.
and save some dough. So it's just about it's not so bad. I mean, it wasn't like I was wasting money per se, but I probably could find ways to. I'm kind of going through right now a mode with all of our businesses where I really want to spend a little more time accounting. Kind of my new revelation that's come to me, is I want to, you think about the Ebenezer Scrooge counting his, his coins or whatever, right? And
Mhm.
he's usually, it's like a bad version, kind of has a bad rap for that. But what I've been thinking about recently is I've spent so much time in the business working on things, trying to grow, that I have neglected the operational side of things and how efficient we are on that side. And the truth is, if I actually look at our expenses, we're kind of blowing money on stuff that we probably don't need. And it's kind of a pain to go through and get rid of stuff or change services or whatever. But it is probably a good practice to clean house. And so you mentioned Elon Musk. I am inspired by that because it's like he kind of came to this company that was wasting a lot of resources, blowing a lot of money on people that were probably working a third of the hours they should be, and making it a better company with cutting costs. That's awesome, you know.
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to say, well, it doesn't matter how many hours they're working as long as they're being productive when you have productive people.
Yeah, good
Right.
point.
But also, to the extreme, like you said, if you have somebody you're paying 40 hours a week and they're doing 12, then maybe you should switch them to part-time.
Yeah,
And
and that's not their fault
well,
either. It's my fault.
yeah, and I don't know if counting hours, like, so what if they work? I guess every company is different and every style is a little bit different, right? Is there a right or wrong one? Probably not really. I think it's just about communicating to your employees what the expectations are, and if the
Yeah,
expectations are, like Elon Musk saying, if the expectation is you work 9 to 5 at minimum, then for 40 hours a week, then that's what I expect, and
totally.
anyway, going back to Richard Branson, I'm pretty sure he would butt heads with Elon Musk philosophically in a lot of ways, but
Yeah,
he mentions, when you have a family, you need to be flexible, and the blessing of being an entrepreneur is you have that freedom to be flexible,
yeah,
right?
true.
Break away from that mold. Um, he mentions that whenever he sends an email late at night, he says, please don't look at this until morning. um,
Smart.
and I'm one to I don't really read my emails at nighttime. I turn off my notifications on my phone. So I get my emails at work. When I'm at home, I really am focused on my family. Um, and I think the kind of the philosophy that I've taken is when I'm with my family, I want to be dedicated to my family and I don't want to
Yeah,
be distracted by work. Right. And when I'm at work, I am pretty focused on work as well, which is why I have this office that is not in my house. So I
nice.
kind of keep them
Yeah.
separate. Okay, so he listed 3 things he learned. 1, as your family grows, check back in with yourself and relook at your values and purpose and ensure the entrepreneurial journey is right for you. That's interesting.
Mm.
Have you ever had to do that?
Mm, maybe I should, but I haven't. I think I'm gone too far down this creek to turn around now. I don't know. I was
I
thinking
can't
about
imagine
that about
anybody. Yeah, I
yeah,
can't imagine any entrepreneur having kids and then being like, it's not for me. Be my own
yeah.
boss. Nah, I'll pass. I'm gonna go get
Get
another
a job.
job.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking how I dropped my daughters off at school now. It was just one for a while, and now I'm doing both, and I become the default dropper offer, and as far as I can see, I'm one of the only men, the only only husbands or man or
Yeah.
fathers, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, doing that. I just don't see a lot of other guys doing that. Now, that's not always true, and back in the other school we were at, there were a lot of fair amount of fathers doing that, and I could kind of tell they were like looking like tech workers. I kind of got that feel. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but they were certainly working from home. So I think that flexibility is really important and powerful. I didn't see my father growing up a lot. He left before I did, got home really late and was exhausted. So, and I'm grateful to him as a child. Like, it's hard to be grateful because you don't appreciate all the work he was doing to put food on the table. But if I could do both, if I could spend that quality time and put food on the table, that would be awesome. That's I think that's what's cool about being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur is you get to do that.
Yeah, that's true. When I used to work from home full time every day, and then once I started working out of the home, I really enjoyed it. So I kind of
Yeah.
switched modes. Um, I During the pandemic and lockdown, I started working from home again every day
Mhm.
for quite a while, and I really did enjoy being around the family more and having lunch with them every day, that kind of thing
Yeah.
with the small kids. And yeah. So,
Are you
okay,
close
so
enough
another
where you can
thing,
go home for lunch, by the way, or anything like that?
I'm about 10 minutes away. I could,
Okay.
but it's kind of a hassle.
It's a break in your
I usually eat here.
concentration.
Yeah.
I will say one thing, which is I remember going to Germany as a kid. I was probably 18 or 19. And, I'm coming from this American perspective where, again, my father's working all the time. That's the kind of the culture here. I show up there, and the first day they pick me up, I'm staying with a family, and everybody's home for lunch. And we're sitting out on this patio. It was not a fancy place. It was a high-rise apartment building, but the father was home, the mother was home from work, the kids were there. We were all eating lunch, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." They came and they took off a day for me. And then every single day this would happen, and I started to realize, "Oh, this is what they do every day." They come home from school, they come from work, and they all have lunch together. This is in Frankfurt, and I was blown away. And I said, at one point I was like, "Is this?" And they're like, "Yeah, we do this almost every day, maybe at least 3 times a week. That's what the whole town does." The whole town would take off, take subways home, everything, and just go have a lunch together. It was a big meal. That was sort of their main meal. Dinner was like a light meal. And I just remember thinking, and then effectively what I noticed was that while my family, my American nuclear family, was very, you know, kind of colder, we were kind of sarcastic with each other, not much touching or hugging going on. Their family was hugging each other. The father would hug the kids when they came home. The kids were excited to see him. They were teenagers. I was like, how are teenagers like so in love with, loving to their parents? This was blowing my mind. And I will say that it really impressed me how, you know, a culture that really spends more family time together, that family unit was a beautiful thing. And I've never forgotten that. So it's something that, I don't always do, but I am gonna, especially as my kids get old, try to make time as much as I can for them. So anyway, that's a little bit of a offshoot there.
Yeah. Well, so another thing that Richard Branson mentions is making a list of non-negotiables for yourself. Um, for me, along that family time thing, I mean, I don't have lunch with them, but I can see why that would be helpful. One non-negotiable for me is no work on Sundays,
Mhm.
and is very much a family. In fact, our kids don't play with friends on Sundays. That's like our family day. So
Cool.
we've been playing games, like tabletop games, a lot lately on Sundays, and that's a good chance to spend some time together. Trying to think of what other non-negotiables there are. I think I had a phase I've talked about before where I worked a lot of late hours as Civic Review was getting launched in the early bootstrapping phase. And could I have done it without doing that? No, I don't think so. And it was a
Yeah.
conscious decision my wife and I made. Okay, I'm going to work some nights here. Um, we kind of agreed recently when once I went full time with my company, we agreed that I wouldn't be doing that anymore. Now, all rules have exceptions if there's some kind of major deadline or whatever, but the baseline rule there is home for dinner every night. This like staying late at night regularly is never going to be a thing again. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Nice.
even though I am more productive at nights, it's
Wow.
it's best to be at home.
I could see the tension, the conflict, whatever tension there. Because I can
Mhm.
see, if it's the time that you light up best, um, that's a hard one. So I need to put in some of those. I think this is one thing I will take away is what are my non-negotiables and think about what those are. I have sort of mostly non-negotiables, but there are still negotiables sometimes. So a day like I like the idea of like blocking out Sunday no matter what and making it focused on family. I think that's a great idea.
Mhm. All right, the third one that Sir Richard says is get your children involved. I'm going to quote here. He says, um, He says, your children would learn so much growing up in an entrepreneurial family. There's no better grounding for the world of work, whatever that might look like, than being
Mm,
involved in running a business. So lean into it. I mean, my
that's
oldest is
cool.
10. He's super curious. I have to think, like, if I had a company that, I don't know, was some kind of construction business, I could get my kids involved a little bit and have them help out. I'm not exactly sure what to do about a tech company, and how to get them involved early,
Yeah.
but I'll have to think about that.
Well, it depends too. You're a programmer, so have you got them into any kind of programming, either, through games or any kind of formal type thing?
No, mm-mm. They've had some training
Yeah.
at school. Um,
Yeah.
I When it comes to educating children to program, I'm ironically very quite against it.
Hmm.
I feel like um, programming is a skill that can be learned really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take like years and years of discipline or anything. Um, I'm in the camp that creativity should be nurtured instead of
Mm-hmm.
the science. The arts
Interesting.
first, then the
Hmm.
sciences. I think that kids who grow up with creative minds learn to express themselves, um, and there's problem solving involved in art and creation. And I think
Yeah.
kids who learn that really well, if they want to be a programmer later, they'll pick it up in a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll be way better than the guy who's been doing it since he was 60.
Mm.
You know.
Maybe. Although I learned later in life, and I will never. What I will say is, because I learned so late in life, I learned like late 20s. I and I had friends that started in like middle school, and they would be like, "Do you want to come? We're taking a programming class," and they would have these like
Mm.
pet computers. I remember, and I was like, "Nah, that's too hard." And I really regret that, because I think my mind, by the time I learned, was not pliable enough to become a really good programmer. So I'm sort of like,
Oh, really?
I can do it. I can figure something out. It'll just take you 3 times as long, but it doesn't come as naturally.
Huh.
And if I had had that from an earlier age, I think I'd be a much better. But the way I look at it is more like, how can you encourage kids to create things with programming? That's the kind of what I've been thinking about, is how can we nurture a sense of creativity, let them create a video game or let them create something that they're excited about, but do it in a programmatic way, which I like, kind of the both. I always like balancing
Yeah.
both the science and the arts in a way. But besides that, I mean, I do think it would be cool to. It is a good question. How do you involve your kids in a tech company? I know Rob Walling talks about about that a fair amount. I think if I'm not mistaken, their kids or one of their sons is doing like he's helped them with some sort of startup or something like that, where there's some sort of course that his kid teaches on Minecraft or something like that, and
Oh,
so it's like teaching
D&D, I
them the whole
think.
process. Maybe,
It's
yeah, maybe
Dungeons
that's
and
it.
Dragons.
That could
Yeah.
be it. Yeah. So kind of like helping them with the entrepreneurial creative side of things, where they're creating their own business and then making their own money. And I think that'd be a really
Yeah.
great thing to help them with. And maybe they start doing like an internship, like with the support stuff. Who knows? Just to kind of see there's the fun side where you make the money, and then there's also the hard side where you have to make the customers
Right.
happy. So who knows? There's some creative things to think about.
Yeah,
My
I've
kids are
talked
not
plenty
ready.
about your oldest is 5, 7,
5. Yeah. So I got a
5.
while.
I've talked plenty about separation of work and family, and maybe I should bring work discussion into my
Yeah.
at the dinner table a little more. Because now that you mention it, I think having that example does help the kids, as they grow and they understand, like, oh, you can chase your own dreams. Like, it's very realistic to own your own business, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. For me, growing up, my dad was a school teacher. Um, I just there wasn't a lot of like, starting your own business is actually easier than you think. It's like, whoa, only like special
Right.
people do that, and um, it is easier than you think. Now, this doesn't apply to like unicorn companies, but there's so many on the long tail end of things, so many things you could do. So yeah, maybe I should just kind of talk about it a little bit more and talk about some of the problems and issues I'm having,
Yeah.
so that the kids can kind of be exposed to that, even if they can't get in and do customer service or graphic design or whatever
Right.
yet. Anyway, so
Well, I would find it
yeah,
hard. I think when my kids get of age, I guess the only way I can see myself involving them is to throw them in the middle of it, because I'm just like someone who doesn't talk about my work outside of those who are involved. Like I don't like I
yeah,
don't come to the dinner table and start blabbing
yeah,
about work, because I just don't feel like anyone cares. So it would
mhm,
have to be where I'd say, okay, your new role is this. Get in there and figure stuff out. I remember working for my uncle in high school. He had his civil engineering business, and no one in the family knew kind of behind the closed door. So I was one of the few in the family that got to go and learn what he was learning, and I learned so much from him, and was fascinated by just kind of running a business. So it did inspire me and gave me a sense of the feeling that this could happen. Like, oh, I could do this. It's not rocket science, like you're saying.
yeah.
Whereas, who knows? I'm not sure if I would have otherwise.
Um,
Yeah, interesting
yeah.
times.
Anyway, I appreciate that article that you sent me from Sir Richard. It was
Yeah, I mean, I
really
think he's a
interesting
little.
to hear.
Who knows how relatable his life is in general.
Yeah,
He's, every time I see him, he's
yeah.
like wind sailing with some, half naked model or something. It seems like
Oh,
his life is about, that. Just he's always in a happy mood. He's always having a blast. So that's a beautiful thing.
yeah,
I think that's why people love him. But also, it's you just take whatever you can from it. But I think these are some decent principles. Is to how do you involve? I like the idea of involving kids in your work, and also that remembering that flexibility. All those are great principles in general.
yeah. Flexibility is hard, especially once you get. Even as an entrepreneur, I've disciplined myself to kind of show up in the morning, work till 5, and um, I'm not exactly that, like, I'm going to work in a coffee shop today or on a beach today or whatever. I'm not
Yeah,
that
yeah.
person, and um, but having a little more flexibility would be really beneficial to the family and allow me to spend more time with them. So I probably should. And one thing that I've done, this doesn't have to do with my family or kids, but I did sign up for a tennis clinic at our tennis club. So I
Hmm.
go to tennis twice a week. I go in the morning, and it's a little later than I would prefer in the morning. It runs from
Hmm.
8:30 to 10. Um, and so I have to kind of be absent from work a little bit, and I feel a little bit of guilt for making my employees work while they know that I'm off having fun. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But um, that happened this morning, and I did come in early before the class and put some hours in, and then I went to the class. So, but they don't really see that. They don't see that I'm in here that early, especially with a remote first team. So, um,
That's
but I
an
might as
interesting
well,
one.
because I started the company so I could do this kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Well, and I think too, if as long as you set the parameters, it's if you guys have something similar, you can do it. But this is how we're gonna, I stay later on those days or whatever, whatever it is, or you're
Yeah.
working on the weekends when they're not, which I'm sure
Mhm.
happens.
Right.
So, any
Anyway,
kind of updates? Any updates with the app with the business or app that you are quickly wanting to
we
share? I
are
can't.
working to develop a training course for our new users, and we're looking for some
Oh, good.
software, Kevin, that can,
Oh,
allow us to administer quizzes to them to make sure that
all
they
right.
pass, so that we can then go to show their boss. We can say, "Hey, look,
Right.
your employee did not do the training that we
Yes.
told them to do, that you told them to do." And so
Right.
this doesn't happen often, but sometimes the user comes all frustrated that they don't know how to use it, and then whatever. And we're like, well, we offer training. We even offered a self-serve training. There's this quiz, we asked you to do. You didn't do any of it. You didn't put the work in, and then we have proof of it. You know.
Right.
So
Nice.
I don't know. Do you know of any software I could use that
I'll have to look around.
put
Let me go
people
on.
through a quiz?
Yeah, I'm gonna go on Gartner and see what the top reviews. Yeah, let's talk. That sounds like an interesting. That could be a good, interesting use case. I'm all into this
Yep.
idea of corporate training, and we talked to one other company for our course platform. That's a Swedish company. We were talking about like how could we do this with their company, so internal training effectively. So yeah, sounds like could be interesting. So we'll talk offline. That sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. How's your
Good
quiz
stuff.
feature going?
It's
It
up and
released?
running. It's released.
Yes.
It's a little got some issues, so we got a new update coming soon to fix some of those, iron some of those out. But we got some major updates out, which is great, and things are a lot more stable with the app. The text editor is actually beautiful now compared to the old one, and a
Nice.
lot of new features. So I'm finally happy about that, and yeah. So there's a lot to do yet, but I feel better about about this version right now. I feel like it's actually like workable. So good stuff.
Cool.
All right,
All
sir.
right.
Good to talk to
Let's
you.
wrap it up.
Yeah. Until next
Sounds
time.
good. See ya.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more by visiting dadswithstartups.com. Please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/Dads with Startups. Until next time, bye.